Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And today my dear friends, we have some interesting Star Wars news and rumours. The latter being with a capital R. The source for our first update is a bit hit and miss, but it's an interesting rumour nonetheless, and probably just good fan math. Because even if it's not certain at this point, I would be very surprised if it wasn't true. The other day, I spoke about the wild rumour that Pocket from Skeleton Crew might be appearing in Ahsoka's second season. But now guys, according to more reports, other characters from Skeleton Crew are expected to appear in the Dave Filoni movie. And Star Wars fans have mixed feelings about this. Let's first clarify a few things. This is not the Mandalorian and Grogu. The 2026 film is Jon Favreau, but the one we're talking about is the one by Dave Filoni a few years down the line, maybe 2028, and that's the one expected to tie up all of these shows. Not the entire Mandoverse, but maybe the first phase of it. And let's be real here guys, with the setup of characters like Wim, characters like Neil and KB who are fan favourites, Jod, SM33, even if Skeleton Crew never gets a season 2, I don't think we've seen the last of them. And you know, even if Lucasfilm decides we're gonna shelve them for a few years, come back to these stories at a later date, further down the timeline because the kids are much older, even now than when they filmed Skeleton Crew, but I can imagine they're going to be a staple of the end of the Mandoverse. During Dave Filoni's movie, here's what the report says. Star Wars Skeleton Crew is now 6 episodes in, with just 2 to go. The show is airing until January 14th. My goodness, that's not very long. The series already has high acclaim, but low viewership, although this is increasing. And according to a new report, the characters that fans have been introduced to are going to make a return at a future date. Dave Filoni is already writing them in his plans, and who knows, might even be alluded to in Ahsoka's second and final season, which is filming in just 3 months' time. This is going to be a very exciting year for Star Wars, guys. But longer term, industry insider Daniel Richman, who like I said, has a pretty mixed track record, believes Dave Filoni's movie is going to be the big crossover. We've known for some time Dave Filoni's wanted to do something massive and epic with his New Republic film, but considering that is not his focus at the moment, no details are known. It is very likely to be a direct sequel to the Ahsoka show, but the Filoni movie is going to be the crossover, the tie-up to much of the current storyline. There is still such a long time before we reach The Force Awakens, so they have time to work on iterations of whatever projects those are going to be after these ones. But just as Jon Favreau's movie is going to contain familiar elements of maybe Book of Boba Fett, perhaps Skeleton Crew, the Dave Filoni movie is going to be the big crossover event, the one we're expecting to contain all of that. And then afterwards, whether it's shows, more movies, animated series, they can start building towards the rise of the First Order. The Mandalorian and its spin-offs were always meant to be the connective tissue between Return of the Jedi and the controversial sequel trilogy, and this will no doubt involve the canon fates of Ahsoka Tano, Sabine Wren, and more importantly, Grand Admiral Thrawn. But the two things that will be defining for this time period are how Dave Filoni handles this story and how the fandom subsequently responds. Because while there was never a reality where the sequel trilogy was going to be retconned, when The Mandalorian started, fans were hoping for different, alternate stories after episode 6, ones that were inspired by Timothy Zahn and other famous authors of the expanded universe, and ones that showed us a Luke Skywalker at his prime, not a recluse. So while episodes 7, 8 and 9 are where we end up, Jon and Dave want to tie it in, but also show us a more glamorous side to the galaxy before that takes place. And this is why I wouldn't be surprised if we get more Luke. Luke's academy before everything goes wrong, when he first takes on his nephew Ben Solo, and before Ben becomes Kylo Ren, before he turns to the dark side. And like I said, if they really want to connect things to the sequel trilogy, then at the very minimum, as we saw in The Mandalorian Season 2, allow fans to spend a bit more time with the Luke that we know and love. The real Luke Skywalker, the rebel hero that facilitated the return of the Jedi, that saved the entire galaxy. It might not fix everything from the last few years, but to many, it could be considered a band-aid. What do you guys think of this rumour? This rumour has been circulating in some spaces online on X and on Reddit, and the replies from Star Wars fans have been pretty hilarious. Because we live in a time with the fandom, I'm not the only YouTuber who said this by the way, where things are very hostile, not amongst fans, but the way fans perceive Lucasfilm. Totally understandable by the way, But after The Acolyte, after a slew of disappointments, cancellations, overpromising, in many ways mismanagement, fans are just a bit fed up. That's why we've seen an increased disinterest in the brand, in upcoming projects, in discussions surrounding lore. Fans have lost faith in the way the IP is being handled, and I don't blame them. So when this rumour came out just a couple of hours ago, at best, fans said, okay great, Skeleton Crew's a great show. But then there were responses like this. Vane could be the only character to pop up and this statement would be true. File it under, duh. This is a good point. It's similar to the way they said, well, there are big tie-ins between the Mandalorian and Skeleton Crew. And yeah, there have been some Easter eggs here and there, but it was mainly just the character of Vane. And the statement, file it under duh, it's pretty expected. Every Mandoverse project to date has had big cameos. Cameos are no longer an occasional treat. They're almost expected. Don't get me wrong, they are very fun. I can't tell you with a straight face that I didn't get very excited when Cad Bane appeared in Book of Boba Fett. And in light of this specific rumour, I would love to see the Skeleton Crew characters again, especially Jod. I can imagine a big team up of Force users. Jod, Ahsoka, Ezra, and others have a lot of faith in Dave. Let's go Dave, let's get back on track. And this is true across most Star Wars fans. Whatever recent projects you liked or disliked, the upcoming movies need a return to form. They need to be done right. Dave Filoni's movie in particular has a lot riding on it. In a way, his reputation depends on it. So, speaking of Star Wars movies and moving on to our next topic, there's been an increasing call from fans and the media that Bryce Dallas Howard should be given her own Star Wars movie to direct. This comes after Skeleton Crew Episode 6, which she directed. And like I always say, directors and writers are not the same thing, but directorially she's done a great job on pretty much everything she's ever worked on Star Wars. And so Forbes said this, Disney needs to give Bryce Dallas Howard a Star Wars movie already. She did some great work across Mando, Book of Boba Fett, and now Skeleton Crew. She didn't do any episodes of Kenobi, Andor, or Ahsoka, but the general consensus in the Star Wars fandom is if Bryce Dallas Howard worked on something, it's probably going to be a banger. And that was true of the most recent episode. And it probably makes sense using someone who's very involved in the TV side of things, instead of bringing in someone from the outside. Bryce has been very committed to Star Wars in recent years, also voicing one of my favourite characters, Yaddle in Tales of the Jedi. But will this happen? Well, who knows? She might just continue directing TV episodes. But going forward, when we're talking about the future of Lucasfilm, even after Kathleen Kennedy eventually retires, Bryce Dallas Howard is someone who is a massive asset for Lucasfilm and Star Wars. What do you guys think? Share your thoughts on all of today's news and rumours in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.